You take the blue pill, the story ends. You take the red pill, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Today I'm going to be bringing you new and exciting information that was revealed at PDXcon about a combat rebalance, and on top of that, some massive changes to the Ascension paths and the Ascension perks. We're going to be looking at what the outcome of the summer experiments were and what might be happening in the future. I need to preface this by apologizing for the state of my voice. It's been a hectic 3 days here at PDXcon, and yes, I am slightly worse for wear. I am doing my best to keep a solid and level tone. I hope you don't find it a problem. But why am I doing this so quickly? What is it I need to tell you? Well, there were some fantastic talks at PDXcon. I also got to meet the Stellaris team, and that was fantastic. They were absolutely lovely, and it was so great to talk to lots of the devs and lots of other people who are really interested in not just this game, but the other Paradox titles as well. There is one talk that I want to tell you about, and that is the combat rebalancing and other experiments. We're going to go through the slides. I managed to get photos of the slides from PDXcon, so we are going to go through the very exciting information that certain people who are privileged enough to be there managed to get firsthand, because I actually think this is worth sharing with everybody. It is, well, it's a massive change that will be coming. So combat rebalance, what does that mean? Well, back in Dev Diary 257, the devs did talk about tradition. Well, back in Dev Diary 257, the devs did talk about tradition of summertime experimentation. There was Iggy's Relic rebalance, which is going to be in the 3.5. There are the species pack achievements. Monzen's exciting accessibility work, that's text-to-speech, is what's being experimented right now, which should help those with dyslexia or other reading-based issues. And then there is Steven, that's the game director's combat rebalance, and Alfred's work on Ascension, on the Ascension tiers. Now, it is very important to remember all of this is very early in development. None of this would normally be shared. We would get something much more polished. We're hearing what has happened over the summer, how did it go, roughly, or what was the idea and the ethos behind it. But I think it is very cool and important to actually think about this and look at what is happening, because this could be some massive and fundamental changes to Stellaris, to some of the systems that are core to the game. Combat, oh well, we'll get to it in a moment. Yes, as I mentioned here, as I said before on the previous slide, very much subject to change. A lot of it probably won't go live apparently as presented, but basically, as far as I know, unless it turns out to be no fun, unless it breaks the game, we're pretty much going to be seeing a rebalance to the combat system. What is the combat system? What are we talking about, though? They first off talked about their goals and what combat rebalance was not. And if you are looking for a planetary combat rebalance, a ground invasion rebalance, you might as well leave now. That's not what was on the table. They wanted to shake up the meta and improve general space combat whilst maintaining a limited scope. They wanted to provide benefits to having mixed fleets rather than just having lots and lots of the same ship. That's Unihull here. They had to use the 3D assets that they had. They didn't have apparently scope for budget and artists to come in and add to this as well. This is, as I said, simply an experiment, simply some tinkering to take the current system and change it. They wanted to improve counterplay and improve the ship design options. And if you're enjoying this video, please rebalance that like button. But yes, what weren't the goals? Well, they weren't going to do a massive rewrite of fleet combat. They weren't going to do changes to war exhaustion, wars in general, ground combat, and invasions. That was all out of scope. And apparently, basically, as a summer experiment, it's important to simply do your own thing, not impact other disciplines, other areas too much. So what are the problems as identified by the game director? Alpha Strike artillery battleships dominate the late game. We added a bit of rock, paper, scissors when we improved strikecraft, but due to the way repeatable technologies interact with combat, eventually all that matters is who has the longer range. Disengagement mechanics further encourage overkill. Ships like destroyers and cruisers fall out of effectiveness almost immediately. The point defense niche of cruisers isn't valuable, and almost anything a cruiser can do, a battleship can do better. Now, this is true. I would say there is a little bit more niche to this, in that we currently have a situation where max evasion psionic destroyers with psionic admirals that have massive evasion can outperform battleships, and then there is a slight tic-tac-toe between destroyers, cruisers, and battleships. However, that isn't always a situation you get into, especially in single player games. You might as well, in single players a lot of the time, simply run battleships. It's easier, your ships don't die as often, it's simply easier to maintain. Commander limits don't really do their intended job, and doomstanks aren't fun. Those two are currently out of scope, but they intend to come back to them, which is really, really exciting. I mean, yes, I have done a lot of work. A lot of this channel's work has been built around looking at space combat, studying it, doing testing on it, and then bringing those results to you so you know what can I do with my ships, what is actually effective, because sometimes the tooltips, they tell us things, but that isn't actually how it boils down in the real world. No battle plan survives contact with the enemy. What are the changes that they've made then? So they've increased the base hull points of ships. They've made combat computers respect desired range more. What does that mean? Well, at the moment, combat computers apparently have a range. You've got Swarm, which is 0 range, Picket 30, Line 50, Artillery 80, Carriers, I want to say 100, 120, something like that. Off the top of my head, I remember not. But the point is, usually what happens is the ships get to that range, and then they go, well, what's my smallest weapon? I'd best get to that range too. So Carriers would sit at the back, and then instead of sitting there forever, fly in to try to use their tiny S-slot weapons, which was a little silly. You end up with these clumps of ships. It didn't look very nice. They want to change that. They added ship role button to the ship designer that better builds a ship that fulfills that role. So this is kind of an improvement to the auto generation. So you could say, I want an artillery ship. Give me extreme range weapons, usually slow with high damage. I want a brawler, extreme short range weapons, high DPS. I want a carrier, strike craft, also stay at extreme range. I want a gunship, mostly medium-sized weapons, a screen. I want point defense to intercept smaller strike craft, and a torpedo, extreme short range, deadly to large ships. Now these roles, somewhat like, I believe somewhat like the roles in Star Ruler 2, if you've played that game. Fantastic game, by the way. Love the economy, how that works, but we're not on that at the moment. Anyway, and I do also want to say a massive thank you to Paradox for inviting me to PDXcon, allowing me to take part in this. I also had a great time taking part in the Victoria mega game as the Kaiser of Germany, and that was absolutely fantastic. I also got to play Victoria 3. That was quite fun and interesting. I did get to play the new Stellaris patch 3.5, and on top of that, I got to play the new Toxoids. I have thoughts, I have ideas. You will be getting to hear about them soon. Do not worry. And if you can't tell by now, I am a little hungover, so I might fall off topic a little. I'll try to fix this in the edit as much as possible, but I'm just enjoying myself. I hope you are too. I hope I don't sound like I'm rambling. What extra changes? So missiles are now S-slot artillery weapons with extreme range. That means that your missiles will fire first. Swarmer missiles are M-slot weapons, and they have adjusted DPS accordingly. Autocannons are now brawler weapons with very short range, but much, much, much higher than normal DPS. Basically, you fly in close and you smash them up with an autocannon. They've added armor hardening and shield hardening stats that counter armor and shield penetration. So basically, these will boost, let's say you've got a missile that flies through your shields. Well, shield hardening stops the missile flying directly through the shields. It will have to do shield damage first before hitting the armor and then hull. I think this is a really cool idea. Strike craft no longer intercept missiles or torpedoes, but do continue to intercept other strike craft. So strike craft are now a one catch-all, defeats missiles, strike craft and corvettes. No, you can't really do that. Point defense and flak are more strongly tight against their preferred targets as well. So that means your point defense is going to be shooting down the missiles. So far what we're hearing here is the engagement now will be missiles fire first. They do not arrive instantly, so they will arrive over time. Depending on the exact nature of the extreme range, I don't know where they're at yet, I would assume the missiles arrive around the same time as the first round of artillery. They also adjusted, by the sounds of things, the missile DPS to mean that if you ignore the missiles, they will have massive, massive damage. Torpedoes, that is, our regular torpedoes, are now very short-range weapons that deal multiplicative damage based on the target size, and they've adjusted DPS. What does that mean? Well, basically, against a battleship, a torpedo will do 5 times the damage as it would do against a little corvette. And that could be very exciting. I do want to say more, but let's get to the other points first before we can continue speculating. Energy torpedoes are now G-slot weapons with a minimum range. That means your proton launchers, your neutron launchers will not be able to fire if the enemy is too close. That could be really interesting. You will also, because it's a G-slot weapon, a torpedo slot weapon, this means you will have to first research torpedoes in the engineering tech tree before you can get proton or neutron launchers. They also deal multiplicative damage based on their target size. What does that mean? Well, now the smaller a target is, the less damage a neutron launcher will actually do. So against a battleship, it will still do massive damage. It will still do a proportionally large amount of damage compared to the hull points on something like a corvette. However, what it won't do is kill the corvette outright, as it used to, and just overkill on that health points. That now means that neutron launchers probably won't be the weapon of supremacy because, and we'll get to this next point, they have added a new ship class. Torpedo corvettes, they're their own class. Yes, we're getting another class to the basic 4. We're getting a 5th basic class, which is pretty mind-blowing in my opinion. This is a massive shake-up, and I think it's going to take quite a while before the meta can actually readjust and work out what on earth is working best. So, torpedo corvettes have much higher hull, much lower speed and evasion than regular corvettes. They've added a torpedo combat computer that increases explosive damage and adds a charge behavior. That means these torpedo corvettes, assigned with your torpedoes, will fly towards the enemy battleships. Unless your battleship takes them down, they'll get in range. You will not be able to fire at them with your energy weapons, your neutron launchers, because you're inside of your minimum range, and then they'll fire these torpedoes at battleships, dealing massive damage multiplied by the size of the battleships and hopefully wiping them out. That should then mean torpedo corvettes are more powerful against specifically battleships than other classes. So how did all of this work, this massive shakeup? Well, it absolutely shaked things up, and it definitely maybe worked, was the game director's feeling on this. Mixed fleets felt more rewarding because each ship class has a valuable service it provides. Corvettes have high evasion, they are fast and good at hunting torpedo corvettes or artillery battleships and cruisers. Also to mention here, cruisers still have torpedo slots, so that gives them a new niche role. You can make them bullies that go and beat battleships to death with their torpedoes at close range. Torpedo corvettes threaten large ships if they're not handled and can switch to using neutron launchers, though this makes them more vulnerable to regular corvettes. They can't be left on their own though, since they are pretty defenseless. They are basically glass cannons. Destroyers provide the best point defense screening, which is now much more important. You want to be taking down those missiles flying in from extreme artillery range, and you want to be taking down any fighter craft flying in as well. The engagement range of carriers does seem to have gone up as far as I can tell from what was spoken about in this presentation. So the tic-tac-toe from an engagement should be strike craft deploy, start flying. Missiles fire, start flying. Everything arrives roughly the same time. It wasn't quite clear what arrives first, but basically your artillery, your proton launchers, neutron launchers, your missiles, and your strike craft should be arriving roughly at a similar moment. There will be some discrepancy, and depending on your range advantage and that kind of thing, you'll have different results here, I would assume, but it's going to be a lot more balanced than before, where you would have an engagement, 2 fleets would turn up, neutron launchers go bloop, carriers die because their strike craft haven't even arrived yet, and the missiles just get laughed out the building. Cruisers are versatile and can be made many different ways, but are also the only larger ship capable of carrying torpedoes, and they can get a lot of them, meaning they are very, very scary if they have torpedoes against your battleships, and that means you'll now need intel to know what kind of a cruiser you're coming up against if you want to have your battleship. Battleships are still battleships. XL weapons or carriers both have a role to fulfill, and they deal massive damage against other battleships, but now it will be scaling less versus some of the small ship types. It was intended, basically, I believe in the beginning, that evasion would counter the battleships. However, there are so many stackers to tracking that battleships can pretty much ignore corvette evasion or just bring some fighters in and then kill the corvettes anyway. So as mentioned here, the larger ship categories already had valuable niches to fill, and therefore they didn't really need to be improved very much. It was more about improving the lesser ships that you never really took, or giving them a specific role, a specific purpose in a tic-tac-toe or in the combat scenario. Apparently these changes also happen to make the Unbidden and Praetorian a lot scarier because it affects their weapons as well. They get torpedo weapons. What is next? So they still want to include a review on how widespread tracking bonuses are. It would be nice for destroyers to have a more noticeable edge when hunting corvettes of either type. They also need to look at repeatables, where they are and how they interact. Lots and lots of extra changes might need to come in. It won't It might have time for Orion, maybe not, but what is the important thing here? They're going to bring us an open beta very soon, it sounds like. That way we can try it ourselves, give feedback, and let them know how it feels. I am very, very happy here about, well, I say I'm very happy. I'm very upset that I'm going to have to redo all of the videos, to be perfectly honest, and that was a lot of testing. That represents a lot of work. But I'm really happy if we're going to get a more balanced and in some ways more fun combat system. I did also have some time to talk to Stephen, the game director, afterwards. We had some great chats actually, and they've got so many ideas of things they want to implement. They're simply lacking, basically they simply haven't got time to do everything all at once. They're only a finite number of people in their team. But to be quite honest, after this presentation and speaking to a lot of the devs individually, I'm really excited about the future of Stellaris and where we might be in 12 months' time. The game, I think, right now is at pretty much the best state it's ever been in, at least from my perspective. We have the most stable, most balanced game that allows you to fulfill so many different sci-fi tropes, so many different playstyles and experiences that I am really excited if it's only going to be getting better from here. But what do you think about the combat rebalance? Do you like it? Do you want a combat rebalance? Are you looking forward to having more diverse fleets be more effective? Or is it something you simply hate? Let me know all of that and more down below in the comments section. The other part of this presentation was Alfred talked about the Ascension paths. And yes, as you can see from this slide, Ascension paths might be moving to traditions, and we might be getting a new one, splitting the synthetic up into synthetic and cybernetic. These placearts are not final. Lots of things here may change, etc, etc, but it's really cool to be able to see what direction it could be going in, what the thoughts and ideas are from Paradox. So what are the summaries for the current Ascensions? Psionic Ascension is only available to regular empires. You need Mind Over Matter or Teachers of the Shroud Origin followed by Transcendence. It feels a bit janky as well to simply wait till you roll the technology, save up and boop boop, you've ascended in about 2 seconds. Genetic Ascension is available to regulars and hive minds. It requires engineered evolution and evolutionary mastery. It doesn't really have a specific role. However, all I'm going to say is watch this space, just wait a bit. Synthetic evolution is only available to regular empires, flesh is weak, and synthetic evolution. The synthetic age is apparently an ascension path. I don't believe it, and most of the others in the dev team don't really feel it's a very ascension path either. Machines get a few extra trait points, but generally it just sucks. So what does the rework replace it with? Psionic Ascension is only available to regular empires. You have the Mind Over Matter Ascension perk or Teachers of the Shroud Origin, and then the Psionic Tradition. So what does this mean? This means you're going to be locked, you're going to have 1 tradition less, but free up 1 ascension perk slots for other cool ascension things, and it means you will not instantly ascend. You'll have to go down the tradition and get to the end, and you could stop at a certain point without fully ascending if you wanted to. Genetic Ascension is available to regular empires and hive minds, Engineered Evolution is the ascension perk, and then Genetic Traditions. You can see a theme here. Cybernetic Ascension is a brand new ascension we're going to be getting, available to regular empires, hive minds, can now get cybernetics, and driven assimilators. That is mind-blowing. This is so cool to split it up, because at the moment there are sometimes you play as the synthetic ascension and you'll stop. You won't fully synthetically ascend because you want to roleplay, or you want to play as a cybernetic race with robots, not just a robot-only synthetic species. Getting this now as a split I think is really awesome. Synthetic Ascension is available to regular empires and machine intelligences. This means machine intelligence will get their hand on the Synthetic Age Ascension perk, and that means they'll also get their hand on the synthetic trait. You won't have to do gimmicky things to get it, which really is going to help them actually get some nice admiral traits later on in the game. And then of course the synthetic tradition. It's also important to mention here, we talked about how they're doing it with the paths. They're also making tradition trees have non-standard unlock requirements, or thinking about it, such as completing a special project in order to be able to do that tradition tree. That could be very interesting, but they didn't really mention much more about that. What should this do? Well, the Ascension traditions include the benefits of the previous Ascension paths with a few adjustments and traditions, and it now means you can get more bonuses because they're going to give them to you over time. Empires will gradually grow into their path rather than suddenly undergoing major changes in an instant. Finally, genetic empires will have a broader selection of ascension paths to choose from. That is very cool as well. Again, do remember this is still very experimental. The QA team hasn't even had the opportunity to give feedback yet, so things may change. And I want to say a massive thank you to my patrons and channel members for supporting me. Your support means so much. If you'd like to help out and support this channel, you can do so by following the links down in the description to either become a channel member or support via Patreon. Okay, how is Psionic changing so far? Psionic trait now increases unity rather than energy from jobs. Why was it giving energy? Alfred made this point. It was an excellent point. It didn't make any sense. Why would being psionic improve your ability to run a nuclear power plant? I don't know. Apparently it did, not anymore. Telepaths now increase output of psionic pops as well. I think that's psionic pops rather than just every pop. I think that's what's happening there. The Sight Beyond Sight Edict supplies your navigators with an abundance of Zro, improving all forms of FTL travel. Basically, you can have Dune. Finishing the tradition tree now guarantees access to a covenant. I'll repeat that. Guarantees access to a covenant. As far as I know, the specific covenant you're going to get your hands on is randomized, okay? That is something important here. However, and this is a big however, you now always have access to a covenant, which is really important and powerful for the Psionic Ascension. If we look over at the tree, what happens? Well, the opener, you gain the latent psionic. You also gain telepathy as a research option, and this requires mind over matter, or alternative, if you have Teachers of the Shroud, you require psionic theory technology. I'm not quite understanding that entirely, but it's pretty much as it was before. On the left, we have gain access to the Cyborg building and gain thought enforcement as a research option. On the right, we have the Great Awakening. Primary species gains the psionic trait, and you gain access to the psi assimilation living standards already at that point. Breach the Shroud grants the Breach the Shroud special project, and telepaths now provide an additional plus 5% psionic output. I assume that's on top of the regular bonuses you get from the Cyborg building. On the left, Shrouded Communications gives you that code-breaking encryption. Mind Readers increases base intel and grants the Sight Beyond Sight Edict, increasing FTL speeds. And then the finisher here is plus 50 Edict Fund, which is okay, not that amazing. It's nice, but not, that won't scale too well in the very late game. But the really big one is you gain the Community Ineffable Special Project, which then gives you access to the Covenant. This is a big upgrade in some ways to Psionic. Yes, you still have the issue of the randomness of getting Mind Over Matter Ascension perk and Psionic Theory technology, I believe, but it is a big change which I think could be going in the right direction. How is genetic changing? Well, genetic traditions require the Engineered Evolution Ascension perk and are available to both regular and hive mind as discussed. They increase not just the number of trait points a species has, but the number of traits a species can have, meaning you can now get, hopefully, lots of little traits and stack them together rather than just having to limit yourself down to 5 traits. There is also greater cloning vat efficiency to keep up with the synthetic pop assembly. You gain access to transgenesis technologies, allowing you to ignore species restrictions on traits and splice Leviathan DNA into your pops. Okay, this actually is massive for genetic. Getting better clone VATs is going to boost hive minds so much, especially in the mid to late game. And I'm assuming this will now allow them to keep up with regular synthetic empires a lot better. Genetic traditions, the opener here, unlock the clone VATs building, plus 3 trait points for organic species. Requires the Engineered Evolution. On the left, genetic resequencing, allowing you to add negative traits to organic species and remove beneficial traits from the same. Then genetic creation unlocks advanced traits and can assimilate species into or out of a hive mind. And finally, enhanced expression, plus 1 trait pick for organics, and you can alter organic pop appearance within the same archetype. On the right, we have efficient cloning. Clone bats produce another plus 3 pop assembly, putting them up to plus 8. If we stack that with the gene building for a plus 10%, and we also have our hive mind, instead of the gene building, we get the spawning pool, that's going to be some crazy spawning. And then there's budding as well, don't forget. Retroviral manipulation reduces species modified project cost, and the finisher here, same as the other second Ascension perk used to be, is plus 3 trait points for organic species, and then it allows you to take the transgenesis technology. A lot of interesting stuff here. Mainly it's still the same, it is mainly the same core stuff, but they've just added in some nice bonuses here and kind of reworked it up a bit. Now here's the cool one. Cybernetic is brand new. Cybernetic requires you to have access to the Flesh is Weak. Or if you're a hive mind, the organo-machine interface. Or if you're an assimilator, you have to have assimilated 30 pops. You can now become a cyborg hive mind or specialize a driven assimilator to focus on cybernetic drones. You can really go for the Borg, basically. Cybernetic traits allow more flexibility with species modification. Assembly standards let regular empires have cyborg pop assembly. That is very cool. And Crucible Worlds are once per massive Empire colony designations that give massive pop growth bonuses. So the opener here. Opener here gives you access to Flesh is Weak, allowing you to become cybernetic. Then, transubstantiation synthesis. Non-driven assimilators can assimilate organic pops into cyborgs, including into or out of hive minds. That is really cool. And driven assimilation, hive-minded pops. That means that you can now, as a cybernetic, conquer a hive mind's empire and simply cybernetically assimilate those drones to make them individuals. That is amazingly powerful. Metabolic reprocessing, minus 10% cyborg upkeep, that's cool. Assembly standards, synaptic subprocessing, Crucible Worlds. Roboticists can now assemble cyborgs. Hive minds get minus 50% empire size from districts. And driven assimilators gain access to the Crucible World. Basically, that takes away the minus 50% pop growth speed on that planet. On the right, you have integrated anatomy, can add or remove cybernetic traits to cyborg pops. That's right, I think we're going to be getting some cyborg traits as well. That's very cool. Modular cybernetics reduces the modified species special project cost, and the finisher here is plus 10% cyborg output and plus 1 trait point picks. This is going to allow you to spec into cybernetic, keep on that, and basically not have to go full synthetic ascension, and give cybernetic away to hive minds too. It's pretty wild. The last one, synthetic, that one isn't really changing that much. This is unlocked by either the synthetic evolution or synthetic age ascension perk. As before, the ascension path transforms organic species into a synthetic one. However, it's now available for machine empires for them to fine-tune their drones into perfect machines. The opener allows regulars to have robotic leaders, and machines can assimilate any robot or machine into their species. On the left, maintenance protocols reduces robot or machine amenities usage, and then optimization algorithms increases your output. Synthetic age on the right grants you the synthetic evolution ascension project, meaning you can then start ascending, and if you're a machine, you get plus 1 trait pick for the machines. Prefabricated components gives minus 50% modify species special project cost. Solid state actuators give plus 2 machine modification points. And the finisher here is regular empires get plus 1 trait pick for robots and plus 1 roboticist jobs added to the Capitol building. That's basically the finisher for regular synthetic ascension as it is now. Machines get the synthetic trait and plus 1 replicated jobs added to the Capitol building. That is really, really good for them. Synthetic is such a good trait to have, and it will actually improve the robots, giving them the feeling of some sort of ascension path. There is very exciting stuff going on right now in the Stellaris team. I cannot wait to see where this goes. As far as I can tell, we may be getting a beta in a few months. Watch this space. And on top of that, hopefully, I spoke to the game director. They might be able to squeeze this into patch 3.6, maybe, who knows. All of this is very much up in the air. This is just internal stuff. I am so grateful and happy to the game director for deciding to basically share this information at PDXcon, share it publicly, because it is really cool to be able to be given a peek behind the curtain, as it were, at what is happening. And I felt it would be totally unfair if I didn't share this privilege with you, my audience. So I hope you have enjoyed this slight sneak into the world of PDXcon and what happened at the 2022 PDXcon in Stockholm this year. If you've enjoyed this video on the future of Stellaris, and if you'd like to know what is coming with Toxoids, the next Stellaris DLC in only 3 weeks' time, click the video on screen now.